It is episode number 2 of the Line Change podcast right here at iHeartRadio, Fox Sports, The Gambler. Jon Jansen here. Make sure you subscribe wherever you can, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe, rate, review, and especially subscribe on the YouTube channel, Fox Sports, The Gambler. Also search up when you're looking for the podcast, The Line Change with Jon Jansen. There are a few other Line Change podcasts that are also very good. I do like this podcast, good hockey ones. I'm not a hockey podcast with the name Line Change. I don't know why I did that, decided to do it. But the Line Change with Jon Jansen, search it up and you will find it. This is, though, an Oscars edition of the Line Change. So I had to get 2 guys. I asked my good friend Adam Rosenberg, you guys know. I said, Adam, you know everyone. Give me your best movie, guys. And he gave me Thom Cunningham. You see him on with the glasses, looking good with the Queen City. What do we got there? Queen City
grounds. Yeah, it's
nice.
A coffee shop.
Oh, nice. And then he also said to me to hit up Brian Ortega. And you guys, by the way, have a podcast, which I will talk with you about. So, Tom, first introduce yourself, what you got going on, where they can find, because you do a lot of movie stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm Tom, and, I guess a title that you could just associate me with at this point is just a sports betting and Oscars betting analyst. And, yeah, I've kind of been all over the place, Vegas Insider, Gambling.com, Sportsbook Review. So, yeah, really excited to dive into this. Brian and I forecast this for literally 12 months of the year. So we're ready for Sunday.
Yeah, what's the name of the podcast?
It is called... Tom.
Box office betting.
That's right. Box office bets. I always forget the title, and I was the one who came up with it, and I feel so bad about it.
Yeah.
That's the first me. I've never heard somebody forget the name of their own podcast. I love that.
Yeah, we got a lot going on.
That is true.
I imagine that because, Brian, you also, I think you're at VSiN right now. I saw your article for these odds over at VSiN.
Thank you. Yeah. So I am basically the resident Oscar person over at VSiN, so I get to just sort of write whenever I can for that one. I'm regulated to just movie stuff though, so I do movie stuff for there, and then I also sort of send a lot of the stuff over to DraftKings Network on their website for their sort of pop culture movie stuff as well. So it's usually focused around betting, but I also produce stuff for their regular sports shows as well.
Yeah, so there's a lot to get into, obviously, with the Oscars and the big one, Oppenheimer. I'm sure we're going to go deep into that because 13 nominations. I saw the Line Change is sponsored by Cut Sports Betting, so cut.com, social betting platform that you can check out. We'll have more details about that later on in a few episodes next week. But they do have a total up of 8.5 wins for Oppenheimer at the Oscars, so I do want to discuss that. But first, before we do that, this is a long game. This isn't for the Oscars. You just look it up a week before and you kind of figure it out. We're doing this way ahead of time. Award season started a few months ago. So when do the odds start to come into play for you? And I'll start with you, Tom, of when these odds first come up and when you start to feel the market is kind of at its best, because I don't feel like right now is the place to do that.
Well, I should say that it depends on what category. So typically the best picture will be the only odds that appear first for a few months. And it could be anywhere from as early as, May to June or July. And then you might get best director odds as well. Those are probably the 2 markets that open first. A few months will go by. You might get actor, actress around end of August, maybe September. And then you'll get best supporting actor and actress, and then the rest of the odds typically won't come out until nominations are revealed. But in some cases, that has been proven to be not true, as screenplay odds have been out early in the past. So really just the main categories come out early in the year, and then as the year progresses, then we trickle down with more markets opening.
Yeah, and what's the thought process with that? And I'll go with this one, Brian, because we don't have really anything like this in sports. Usually we bet before the game, and then it happens, and then bets cash out. This is a little bit different. We do have award season though in like the NBA. NBA has their awards, MVP. Is it like that? How would you kind of describe what it's like to bet the Oscars in your process of finding these bets throughout the year?
Definitely. So I would 100% agree with that. So this year, I think they came out around July was this like the general nominations that Tom is talking about. But it is like betting an awards market because you're really not betting. Some of it is handicapping the actual play on the field, and some of it is also handicapping the voters who vote on this thing. So it's good to know sort of past history of how they like to vote, and also sort of figure out when these movies come out, because then you have to figure out, I use this example on a different show, that let's just say that Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson play early in the season, and then let's just say Lamar Jackson got one over on Patrick Mahomes, but then Patrick Mahomes has a great end of the season. He might have a better run at the end of the season because he played at the right time. It's fresh in the voters' minds when they have to bet. So you have to look at it kind of how you bet these futures markets. And half of it is being a fan of said sport or said movies, if you will. You kind of forecast what movies are going to be big that year, and then sort of get your game plan of who you think, sort of power rank who you think is going to be good that year, and also contend in the awards markets.
Now we'll get into, obviously, the process of the Oscars, because there's 9,000 plus voters, and there are some movies, because I think the one that everybody pointed to, a movie that got nominated that really shouldn't have, or at least two actresses in the movie, Nyad gets nominations, and everybody's like, what on earth is Nyad doing here? But that's the Oscars. Like, we get those movies. So what are some Oscars ticks? What are the trends? What are some habits that they have in terms of not only getting these nominated, but then eventually picking winners? Brian, I'll start with you on that one.
Yeah, I think one of them is definitely going to be the biopic. That's sort of like the sort of tired thing that everybody hates. I love biopics, so I'm totally for it. But again, it's very paint by numbers, and many biopics kind of go wrong. Like you saw Marley, not Marley. Is that called Marley? Oh, it was One Love. It was about Bob Marley.
Yeah.
And like people who really enjoy Bob Marley enjoy the movie, but it was really panned just because they didn't really enjoy, the critics didn't enjoy the film itself. So people like them, but sometimes they can go wrong. But that's one of them. Period pieces are also really big. So, for example, Poor Things is not really like a period piece, but it does take place in a time period, and it's sort of, different and unique. So I think we have a very diverse set of, nominees here, but that is definitely one. Also, you have a lot of legacy people like Robert Downey Jr. You also have the ladies from Nyad, Jodie Foster, who I think I think she should have deserved a nomination, but that's one thing to look at, is those sort of legacy actors, and also like Nolan is a legacy director who hasn't won yet. So you have to have those storylines sort of mapped out going into the season.
Yeah. Any Oscar voting habits, Tom, that you have observed?
I mean, it really depends on what category you're looking at. And so Brian mentioned period pieces. Those typically clean up costume design. Any movies that deal with fashion, Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris last year, Cruella was another one. Those do pretty well with costume design as well. Sticking with Poor Things, I think the production design also with period pieces does pretty well. The fact that Poor Things kind of ties in period pieces along with the uniqueness of its world is really going to help production design. I think actually it was the underdog, and I'm pretty sure it passed Barbie in production design, and is now the favorite, which is pretty impressive considering the production design of Barbie Land alone was real phenomenal. So for me, it does depend on the category. I know for cinematography, Brian and I talk about this a lot. The camera nerds love when you utilize black and white. And when you look at Oppenheimer, they did that pretty phenomenally. I mean, there's a lot that Nolan did well with that movie, but the cinematography nerds really kind of, love that style. And so it's little things you have to look for within certain categories. And you kind of have to start thinking, okay, how are the cameramen thinking about cinematography? How are the costume designers thinking about costume designs? And I will also say with makeup design, typically movies that take you through a character's entire life, The Eyes of Tammy Faye, Maestro, they do well with makeup design because you are using a lot of prosthetics and makeups and designs to basically move a character through their life. And so those are things I would look for. But again, it does come down to the specific category that you're looking at.
You know what's funny about all of that you just said is Oppenheimer has every single one of those pieces. Like Oppenheimer just feels like an encapsulation of everything. And the thing is, I don't know if Nolan did that on purpose. Nolan's just a very good director, and I think creates very good movie moments, very good movie set pieces. And it encapsulates everything of, I think, what you just said, the period pieces, the fact that he does have he has Cillian Murphy going through so many years of Robert Oppenheimer's life, all of that stuff. So Oppenheimer, 13 nominations for a reason. Before I get into that, because Oppenheimer is going to, I think, take up some of this, a lot of this discussion. But leading up to, I think the other thing we look for is when award season starts, what certain awards are we looking for ahead of time? So what awards give you a good indication of what might be going strong or have momentum heading into the Oscars?
Brian, you want to take this with the SAGs? Let you run with this?
Yeah. So you have to look at a lot of the precursors, but honestly, me and Tom have been looking at this from early in the season. So once you start getting into the critics awards, like the Las Vegas Critics Awards Guild and the Los Angeles Awards Guild, you have to look at those ones just to kind of see, just take the temperature, put your finger in the water, see what's going on. But you have to have your own intuition about how this is going to go. Like when I saw Killers of the Flower Moon, which came out in I can't remember when Killers of the Flower Moon actually came out.
October?
It was October. That's right. I just felt like Lily Gladstone was going to be a big part of that film, and her odds moved astronomically. So you do see these trailers come out and you say, okay, that person, I can see them maybe having a big contribution. Obviously, I thought that Margot Robbie would get a nomination for Best Actress. She didn't, but more so because she's sort of the center of the film. It made so much money. How could they leave her out? So I do look and see how they're performing, and then you go from there. But again, this year it happened so much so early with Oppenheimer kind of going in, kind of took up a lot of the air out of the room for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, that you kind of didn't get that this year, which usually it happens later in the season. But I don't know. It's a very interesting thing to track.
Brian, what's the stat with the SAG winner for? Is it Best Actress or Best Supporting Actress?
So I know for Best Support, I think for Best Supporting Actress in the last 10 years, they've matched up 10 for 10.
For the SAG winner, yeah.
Yeah, and the more recent one,
the SAG winner for that was
wild.
Divine Joy Randolph is going to win everything.
Yeah, so that happens quite a bit. I did a lot of that. That stat is actually from last year because I remember DeBose. It was either last year or the year before. Oh no, that was Jamie Lee Curtis last year. But she also won a SAG, and then she ended up winning the Oscar, and she was not the favorite. So that's a very good indication. But this year, for Best Actress, we'll get into this a little bit later, there is a very unique stat to talk about. So unless you guys want to talk about it now.
I will say there are some precursor shows that you want to avoid. And I think the Golden Globes and probably the BAFTAs would be two that you probably shouldn't look too much into the results because the voting pool is very different. It's very international based. And I think this kind of goes right into the animated film market. If you were to tell me that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse and Boy Heron are going up at it in the BAFTAs, I would probably take Boy Heron because it's a much more international flavor and flair, and that's just the voting panel. With the Academy Awards, it's much more, domestic voting. And so for this award show, the Oscars, I would probably lean Spider-Man more because it just has much more domestic flair than Boy Heron. So I think the international award shows are probably ones you best avoid of all the award shows before the Oscars actually take place.
Yeah, I think animation is a good category for kind of what you guys saying of habits, because Japanese animated films don't get a lot of love. It's usually Disney Pixar stuff. It's usually the children's stuff. If it's a mature Japanese film, Hayao Miyazaki only has one award. And Hayao Miyazaki is considered one of the best directors, and I think this is one of his best movies. But you're right. As much as I love The Boy and the Heron, Spider-Man, Spider-Verse, that's easily, I think, a one that the Oscars would fall in love with. And it's this cartoonish style. It's still a little bit mature, but still for kids. I completely agree with that. So let's start off with the big one. Oppenheimer has 13 nominations. And Brian, I know you wrote about this a lot, so I'll start with you first on this one. What are we looking at here with Oppenheimer? Because to me, it does feel like this movie is going to dominate, and not just 6, maybe 7 awards. I think we could be getting close to 10 award wins, and the surprises you're going to see, I think, are just going to be Oppenheimer in like the secondary categories. How much do you think Oppenheimer is going to dominate the Oscars?
Sure. So this is one of the years that I'm okay with it just dominating because it's my favorite film of the year. I've gone through years where my favorite movie didn't win anything, and I just left super pissed off.
Yeah.
I mean, like last year, Everything Everywhere All at Once, I absolutely hated that movie. I didn't get it. I watched it 4 times, never understood it. But I understood it was going to win, so you just have to go in knowing this. But I think, so you hung up something on Twitter, which was an over-under 8.5, which I think is the perfect number because I think 10 is going to be a stretch for it to get there. But I think the categories it's going to clean up in is Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Supporting Actor, Cinematography, Sound, Original Score. What else do we have? I think is that 8? I think I got to 8.
Editing? Do we get the editing?
Oh, and editing, of course, because editing and Best Picture, that's always a correlated one. So typically, this is just for learning to handicap this. If you think that your Best Picture is going to win, you probably should go ahead and bet it in Best Editing as well, because that typically goes hand in hand. But I think they're going to have trouble in obviously they're not going to win Best Actress, which was Emily Blunt. So that's one that's going to go down. And then also the adapted screenplay. It's close. That's the one that's going to get you over 8.5.
I'm kind of going back and forth, though.
Yeah, so that's the one that you have to keep your eyeball on, because I think it's plus 200 at the moment. It's right behind American Fiction, which is minus 250, the favorite, which I did see that this sort of stuck out to me as I was writing the article for this particular category, adapted screenplay. And this one, I think a lot of people think there's three options: Barbie, Oppenheimer, and American Fiction. American Fiction has won this category for most of the award season. They won at the BAFTAs, which again doesn't always match up. It's not a big thing, but the thing that I took away from that is that if any place on this precursor trail was Oppenheimer going to win adapted screenplay, it would have been at the BAFTAs. You have a British director who won for Best Picture, Best Director at the BAFTAs, and could not win in the adapted screenplay category, which I think is a huge deal. It also won at the Golden Globes, which again, we don't use as a huge precursor, but with all of the Golden Globes having all of those nominees in it, including the comedy ones, not comedy, but original and adapted, and American Fiction came out on top, I think that says something to it being the favorite. So right now, I think it should be a bigger favorite, but right now it's minus 250, which I know we don't like betting chalk, but that's probably one of the nicer, chalkier plays, I think.
You're gonna have to bet chalk if you are betting the Oscars. Like if you're giving advice on betting the Oscars, I mean, especially for this year, I guess it would be you're gonna have to bet some chalk, right?
Yeah, unless you got these right at the open, which I got Anatomy at the Fall right at the open with plus 175, and I felt really good about it.
Yes, yeah, I got it best original screenplay. I got it at a solid number, and plus now it's what minus 2 something.
Yeah, I think it's minus 275 or something. But I don't know. How do you guys feel about Oppenheimer's chances of getting over 8.5? Because I think that's a great number, hanging 8.5. And I think the under was plus 100. I would take that all day, to be honest.
Oh, the under plus 100, yeah. So I was thinking under because initially I got to at least 7 that I felt really comfortable going, yes, they are going to win that. And then there's a few adapted screenplay that I'm just not sure. So yeah, I would probably go under, but there is a part of me again that the Academy, I know all the precursors are there, but the Academy is just going to absolutely fall in love with this movie. Yeah. This is everything. I don't want to do everything everywhere all at once. This is everything all at once. Everything you look for in an Oscar movie that would be considered either Oscar bait or what Oscars are looking for. Oppenheimer has absolutely all of it. And I think there is a chance that they could, but I think for the most part, yeah, I wouldn't feel comfortable because I see 7 that I really like, and the others are.
So I think the number is 8 is the number. So you probably go under 8.5. We actually got Anatomy of a Fall at plus 275 and Oppenheimer at plus 100 in the screenplay categories. So if you want to ride with Oppenheimer and adapted for plus value, I mean that's really the only category I see where you can get value for it at this point. So. I don't mind taking a shot on it. It is the best movie of the year, and I'm pretty sure the screenplay has gone to the best movie of the year the last 2 years. I know Everything Everywhere All at Once won a screenplay.
Yep.
So I don't hate that. I think your 7 locks are best score. It's going to clean up best score easily. Best picture, director, actor, supporting actor, film editing, and cinematography. I think those are locks. I would say best sound, but I saw the zone of interest, and it going from plus 650 to plus 150. And the sound is so key to the story. It doesn't work without the sound. And so I think it's fair to consider that questionable. And then adapted screenplay, obviously you guys touched on too. So I think either way you look at it, it's under 8.5.
Yeah. Looks that way to me. I do want to go to the other best original screenplay because Anatomy of Fall started to have this rise, and I was so mad because it happened at the Golden Globes where I think the momentum for Anatomy of a Fall started. I was like, Past Lives is the one that's going to actually bold prediction. They're going to win a few awards. Past Lives is like this not underrated, but I think it's going to win more than you think. And it flipped on me. Anatomy of a Fall ended up taking that spot. It's had a lot of momentum. and the other one was The Holdovers. To me, those are the two that can be sneaky here because they're both really good original screenplays, and I think they're pretty close. I know Anatomy of a Fall ends up being a bigger favorite, but they've been pretty close with original screenplay. And everybody that's been talking about at least one long shot and one value are Paul Giamatti and Sandra Hüller. Do these two movies have any legs for some of this in some of the other big categories, especially when it comes to best actor or best actress? These are the two I feel like that could be sneaky. Are there any other movies that you feel kind of sneaky about? Because it doesn't feel like there are many this year. Those are the only two I'd identify as, if it happens, those would be it.
Yeah, I don't think Giamatti is going to get the nod over 3 hours of Murphy playing a guy's life for a disgruntled teacher. I don't want to sound like that guy. I think Giamatti's fine with the nomination, but to actually lift the award over Murphy, and quite frankly, even the other nominees, I loved Domingo and Rustin. I loved Cooper and Maestro. So like Giamatti did a good job. Don't get me wrong. I'm just not sure the character was as complex or was on screen as much, as Murphy. And I think Murphy is just a shoe-in to win that award. And then I like Hüller. I like her in Anatomy of a Fall, but it's a 2-horse race for best actress. It's between Gladstone and Emma Stone.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's what that's really what we're doing. Like, we basically whittle all these things down to, if we can get it to a 2-horse race, that's fantastic. Like, best actress category is kind of what we want, at least going into the night, where there's a little bit of uncertainty. But yeah, I don't think Paul Giamatti is going to lift it over Cillian Murphy, because I think he needed to win the SAG, and he didn't. And I think it's Cillian's night for sure.
So there's not going to be many surprises, I don't think. Maybe we could get some in the secondary categories. There could be some surprises, but it seems like Oppenheimer is going to basically run the table for the top categories. And the only one really is Best Actress. This is flipped. Lily Gladstone got some late, I think, wins in award season and flipped the odds. And now Emma Stone, who was the favorite, ends up being plus 125. I saw Lily Gladstone at the start of February. She was, I think, plus 120. So this is flipped. Has this flipped for you? Do the odds make a difference for you guys in this? How are we looking? Because this is one of the more interesting 2-horse races, I would think.
Brian's looking good over Gladstone. I hedged them, Stone and Gladstone, early in the year because that was the smart play. But I think Brian, you didn't hedge them, did you, Brian?
I will. I'm going to get Emma Stone here at plus 165. I had Lily Gladstone at plus 300, so I felt really good. I know that's not a big number, but for these, it kind of is. But I got Lily Gladstone pretty early, like before Killers of the Flower Moon came out, and then once it popped, man, I started seeing stuff go back and forth, and I knew that SAG night was going to be a huge deal. Like, that was the only award that I was really like on pins and needles. And then hearing Lily Gladstone, it was almost like I won the award. And the thing is, you don't win any money. You don't win any money for winning the NFC Championship game, but you have to get to the big game, and we got a shot. So now she's at minus 250, and Emma Stone's at plus 165. I would feel really good about hedging on Emma Stone. She has the whole storyline of her getting her 4th nomination. This would be her 2nd Oscar if she can win. If Lily Gladstone wins, she's going to be the first Native American to win in the Best Actress category. So she has that sort of storyline as well, and a lot of these things are storylines. And I don't know. I'm going to ride with Lily Gladstone on Sunday.
Nice. I do like that. Emma Stone, I think, should have won. I thought that was almost a guarantee for me because she was such a more of a focal point of that story. She was that story. And Lily Gladstone has a big part, but it was still from the perspective of Leonardo DiCaprio's character, and Lily Gladstone just had this big part in it. So I thought I might have put it over for Emma, but I'm not
John,
sure.
Did you see 1001 by any chance?
Yeah, no, I did see 1001. I think I did see that
With Tiana Taylor?
Yeah, I did see that. Yep, I saw it a while ago.
I like Tiana Taylor this year, but she didn't get nominated. It's okay.
Yeah.
She was very good. I didn't like the movie itself. I thought the narrative kind of collapsed on itself by the end. It had some weird twists that I thought didn't work, but Tiana Taylor was very good. She was a big part of that movie, and a very good part of that movie. The only part I really liked. I think one other category that I was kind of surprised that it took the favorite was visual effects. Godzilla -1 is like this underdog story. It came out, everybody went, holy bleep, a Godzilla movie that's really good, had a lot of human elements in it, just this great human grounded story with this big monster just at the top of it. And so it was great. And I didn't think, though, that it would end up not this underdog story now becoming the favorite over The Creator, which felt like such a slam dunk. It was a terrible movie, though. It was such a slam dunk to win visual effects because of some of the achievements that I think that they made during that. It just fell apart, though. Is Godzilla -1? Should that be the favorite? Are we looking at that as that is now the favorite and should be for?
Can I pump my chest, Brian?
Do it. Do it.
Yeah. When it opened at +120 on January 24th for best visual effects, I said take it. Hop on it as quickly as you can. I've seen maybe one Godzilla movie before this movie. And I was kind of irritated that Oppenheimer did not get shortlisted for best visual effects and Godzilla did. And it irritated me because I thought Oppenheimer had great visual effects. And it also irritated me because it meant I had to go see a Godzilla movie in a theater. So when I went into the theater and I saw the movie, I came out of the theater. I wanted to stand up and clap at the end of it. I didn't, but I wanted to. And I will honestly say it's probably outside of like your Oppenheimer and some of your Best Picture nominees. It's one of the best movies you have to experience in a movie theater for sure. So I think it's justified now as the favorite. We got it at +120, and so we'll hopefully hit on that on Sunday.
I also jumped on it at +120 as well. Feeling the same way that I think Oppenheimer was snubbed. We don't like using the word snubbed, but it should have been in the visual effects category, making it 14 nominations, which ties the record, which it'll have to deal with 13, I guess. But I jumped on Godzilla -1 at +120, and then it started winning all the visual effects guilds, and now it's at -200 with The Creator at +130. I do agree. The Creator looks really cool. It felt like something new and fresh before, Dune 2 came out, and then it just wiped the floor with every other movie. But I mean, I think The Creator did fall apart at the end as well. So I jumped on it. So I'm really excited to be on that with Tom. So hopefully that's the one that raises the roof over on Sunday.
Real quick, John, the visual effects are usually broken up into two different things: computer generated and practical. And for those that don't know, I mean, computer generated is pretty self-explanatory. Practical is man-made, so like fire, wind, water, things like that. And Godzilla -1 utilized both forms of visual effects to perfection throughout the movie. So I think that's, if you're looking at it from like a scientific or, something on paper, that's what you would look at. And so, I think it's a worthy winner.
Anything with the short films. I haven't checked out any of the short films, so I was going to just kind of lean on you two for that. I feel like there would be some value in this just because it's a category that, not everybody's paying attention to the short films. It's the long ones. It's Oppenheimers and Barbies and Maestros. But short films are the one market. This is like betting a mid-major college basketball team. Like the market's not sharp, so you can maybe find some value, but you also have to be watching these teams and you have to know kind of how it's going to be played out. Any short film odds that you guys like or anything with these two categories? No.
I did so much research that I watched 2 trailers last night.
Oh,
that's all I needed.
Trailers were good.
So I watched. It was for best animated short. We have War Is Over, inspired by the music of John and Yoko. I'm assuming that is the famous John Lennon and Yoko Ono. -125, and Letters to a Pig, which is +110. I'm like, oh, that's pretty short odds. Let me go look at that. So I couldn't watch the whole thing online, unfortunately, but I have to say, War Is Over probably looked the best and had the coolest story. Nice. So I was like, probably should be the favorite. But Letters to a Pig, not my thing. It felt a lot more sort of Japanese style. So I was like, this is like an interesting category. Like I would maybe lay the 125 because I like it. I just thought it looked good, at least in the trailer. So this is sort of like a Vincent Chase thing from the Entourage, where you're just like, I'm going to sell you on this trailer. And that's basically what happens. So I think War Is Over looked kind of good, but other than that, not really. But
it's the best I don't know if advice you gave today.
I do have like a tip though for these shorts, because a few years ago, I mean, it was -250, but we did hit Riz Ahmed's The Long Goodbye, I think, for live action short. And when you look at live action short, you actually have, believe it or not, a Wes Anderson movie starring Benedict Cumberbatch. But the problem is that it's -700 to win. It's going to win, but the point is, if you can get into this market early enough, look for big names in. It's kind of like big fish, small pond per se, like Gonzaga in the WCC. You have these like big, baddies in these smaller markets that are just dominating. And a lot of the voters, they might not even watch all 5 shorts. I mean, they should, but they might just say, oh, Benedict Cumberbatch and Wes Anderson is in that. I'll watch it. They like it. And they say, boom, there's my vote. So, I think that proved a little true with Riz Ahmed at -250 a few years ago. He just ran away with this market, best live action short. So that's something I may be looking for, down the road for other Oscars, kind of get into that market early and look for big names.
So, John, I don't know how big you are in me and Tom are really big into this, but original song. How do you feel about original song category?
There's no way they take it away from Billie Eilish.
There's a way, actually.
You think so?
There's a way. I'm not saying it's a dunk, but
Was it
I think there's a way.
Or is it something else?
Okay, so she just won 2 years ago, so that, they might want to buffer it a bit. She should win, but to me, Jon Batiste has a lot of obviously great value. He's plus 2,500. And look, Judas Black Messiah won Best Song at 25-1 not too long ago. And we've talked about how hard it is to forecast Best Song because musicians are voting, and it's very difficult to understand what they think is a best song, what the criteria is. And I think with Jon Batiste, what the song is, what him and his wife have gone through, and I think the fact that he is so loved by the peers, which are the voters in the music industry, I think there's a chance that he might take it. I'm not saying he will, but if you have couch change or house money and you're just looking for a long shot because all the value's gone in this event, why not ride with Jon Batiste? He's beloved by his peers. Billie Eilish just won a few years ago. And the story. And the story behind the song. So I think there's some key things to look at for a potential upset for Best Song.
Yeah, I like that because Best Song, that's obviously, I don't think many people watch American Symphony, especially compared to something like Barbie. So that is something, right? You can sneak in, again, something that just hasn't been watched. It's going to be hard because that song, they even played in SNL, and Billie Eilish is so big, and it's a great song. And I just know that probably when they do the Best Actress, they're going to play this song during it. Like they're going, this is the one, like this is the song that encapsulates everything Barbie was and everything it was for women, and it does that. And I think it's so powerful that it's going to be hard to take away. But I think you have a good point there, and not many people watch American Symphony. It's something that's kind of flying under the radar, and yes, it's a music movie with Jon Batiste writing the lyrics for it and stuff. So yeah,
Brian called Billie Eilish when the movie came out. So
I did. I was like, oh yeah, that's going to be the Best Picture nomination. But then also, so I did say that, and I do think it's probably going to win at -750. The big sort of like nail in the coffin for my other pick, which I'll explain in a second, was when it won Best Song for a Motion Picture at the Grammys, and I was like, oh yeah, we're done. We're just donezo. But I do have a ticket for I'm Just Ken, which will be performed live at the Oscars. I have it at, I think, +4 or +500, something around there. I think it's +400. So hopefully it wins. But I think this being in the middle of the movie, and this is a whole thing that kind of comes into play with you talking about original song, that you want it to be a part of the film, not just like at the end credits, which honestly, like What Was I Made For was kind of the tail end of the movie. But anyways, I'm Just Ken, I think is going to be awesome. And again, Billie Eilish has already won one. Maybe they want to just spread the wealth around and give it to Mark Ronson, who's Lady Gaga's music supervisor, and maybe like they just wanted to get Billie Eilish there to sing because then people like Billie Eilish. But I'm Just Ken, I'm riding with it at +400, but I think What Was I Made For will win.
Nice. Yeah, I'm with What I Was Made For. Again, see, I'm thinking that they do it at the Oscars because the end of Barbie is the montage of all these little girls and playing as kids and growing up, and it was the whole movie in one song.
Yeah.
And I thought it was absolutely phenomenal. But a couple of good ones there. The last one specific category I want to go through, and then we'll kind of go just into what you guys do have for some bets. Actor in a supporting role. I know we talked about it a little bit, but does Robert Downey Jr., is this locked up? Is locked up as, I know Divine Joy Randolph, that one's over. That one's completely done. But for best supporting actor and best supporting role, is Robert Downey Jr. kind of also a lock for you guys?
Yeah, and I think justice is being served for Best Supporting Actress for me and Brian, at least. I mean, last year, Stephanie Hughes should have won Best Supporting Actress.
Yeah,
I'll just go ahead and say it. And when we reviewed the holdovers, we both said, well, there's your winner for Best Supporting Actress is Divine Joy Randolph. She opened at +600. I'm sorry, +160, not 600, +160. But she was an underdog to Danielle Brooks for The Color Purple. And now you see the odds for Divine Joy Randolph. So I don't know. I think for Brian and I, this is like served justice in this best supporting actress market this year. For supporting actor, yeah, it's over. It's Downey.
Yeah, Downey's got it. I mean, I thought Mark Ruffalo was going to put up a little bit more of a fight just because.
I thought so too.
He's kind of, he's a quintessential supporting role in that character, and he does push Bella Baxter to like different stages of her sort of adulthood. But it just seems like everybody was just charmed by Robert Downey Jr. Ryan Gosling felt kind of like uninterested in like doing any like promotions for Barbie. He's always seems like he's kind of putting it off, which I think voters don't like. So I think people are throwing his name in there. I don't think he has any shot. It's Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, and De Niro did really well, so I'm glad he got nominated over Charles Melton. And then also, I will say just a shout out to Glenn Howerton for Blackberry, because I thought that was
he was very good.
That was your guy.
Yeah, he was very good.
I
wasn't as in love with that movie as everyone else. I did really like it, and Glenn Howerton and Jay Buchel were two awesome, kind of different performances for them, and they absolutely crushed it. So I loved it. I wish Sterling K. Brown was getting a little bit more love because I thought he was the best part of American Fiction.
He was great.
Legitimately
so
the best
good.
part. But
he's good in everything he does.
Yeah, he really is.
He was 5 minutes of Black Panther. He stole the scene.
He's so good. So what? I'll just get into the bets then. We'll wrap up sort of the Oscars, and then I do want to talk about some movies for next year, and also a movie that came out very recently that we all watched that I want to talk about with you guys. But just final bets, what you do have, and what bets maybe some people can make right now that are on the board. Tom, I'll start with your bets.
Well, okay. I mean, there's not a lot you can make now. Again, I think adapted screenplay Oppenheimer is perfectly fine. Best sound zone of interest is fine. It Never Went Away, best song is fine. But again, these are all, these are unlikely to hit. Just keep that in mind. So, I mean, honestly, if you're looking at the only value I think that's worth definitely hitting right now is Godzilla -1 for best visual effects. But again, we say this all the time. This is a market you have to bet early. You can't wait until, the weekend of the Oscars. You have to bet as early as possible. Brian and I were laying down bets in August. That's how early we start. And we got Oppenheimer. He probably got a better price, but I got it at plus 150. Murphy, best actor, minus 125. Downey Jr., minus 125. Divine Joy Randolph, plus 160. So you really have to attack this market early. But if you're looking at something right now, go with some of the value plays we've gone over already. Otherwise, Godzilla -1 is probably your cheapest favorite likely to win.
Yeah, I'm similar to Tom. Like, we got in Oppenheimer actually kind of late, to be honest, where we got it at like plus 125 when I should have got it at like plus 400 or something of that nature. But what can you do? You get lost in the sauce a little bit when you're getting ready for stuff. But my big one is Lily Gladstone at plus 300. I also hedge, and I'll hedge and get Emma Stone at like plus 150, 165, something of that nature. But Lily Gladstone, I'm also like looking up my phone here. Anatomy of the Fall at plus 175. That's the one that I have. Still think I think it's an interesting bet. If you go with Oppenheimer at this point, if you want to go for some, plus value, I think Oppenheimer might have a shot in adapted. But again, we'll see how it goes. And then other little things that I have, Godzilla -1 plus 120. And then also I did sprinkle Poor Things for best costume design, which I'm really excited to see where that one goes. We didn't really hit like production design, hairstyling, or costume design, but costume design, Poor Things right now plus 100. Barbie's at minus 150. Barbie has almost zero momentum going into the Oscars.
It really doesn't. I forgot to ask you guys about that because I saw a number of 3.5 Oscars for Barbie. It's got nothing.
Yeah, it's gonna go under that.
Yeah, because really the only thing that I think it might win is best song is a shoe-in. So that's one. And then you have these production design and costume design categories where Barbie is a very slight favorite at minus 150. That is not a lot of space between you and the next person.
Yeah, it just feels like Poor Things is kind of like, the New England Patriots versus Falcons Super Bowl. Like it's coming, and it's going to take over at some point. I'm a Falcon fan, so I can say that.
And then production design, Poor Things is now minus 200. Even last week, you could still get it at plus 110. So that overtook Barbie. And the one other sort of interesting one that I have is for makeup and hairstyling for Poor Things over Maestro. I think this is going to be a close race. Maestro is minus 175. A lot of people are saying that that's going to win. But you never know. Sometimes you get the momentum, and a lot of people didn't really enjoy Maestro in terms of who's voting for this. Or some people did. I've been reading a lot of those like anonymous ballots, but Poor Things at plus 125 may not be a bad stretch for makeup and hairstyling. So Poor Things in all the design categories is what I'm saying.
I don't know if this happened by accident or not. I was irritated by it, though, because there's so many good movies this year. But these same 5 movies are nominated in both production and costume design. And that just bugs me a little bit, because there were so many good movies this year to do that. Yeah, too many good movies for that to happen. So
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Wow.
So I do want to move forward into potentially next year's Oscars, because we got to look ahead to this now. We're still a few months away from really looking at any odds. But we had one movie that is probably going to be a big name going into it, Dune Part 2. Tom, I know you do this with when you see a movie, you end up writing about it. So what prospects does this have for next year's Oscars? What categories do you
how much time do we have? Honestly, I mean... So right off the bat, I'll say it was better than the first one. And I think it has a better chance to win Best Picture than the first one. Now, the first one was nominated for Best Picture. It didn't win, and it's because it was very confusing. If you didn't read the books, you have no idea what's going on. You're trying to look up words because you don't know what they mean while the movie's going on. By the time the second one comes around, I think they understood that. And I think they dialed it back, and they gave it a much more flowing and familiar, narrative that a lot of people could... I'll sit here and say you don't even need to see the first one to enjoy and follow the second one. You could just go into the second one blind. Yeah. So quite frankly, I think it's going to clean up a lot. It should clean up. It did in the first movie. Best sound, best visual effects, a lot of the secondary stuff. It's very rare we get this heavyweight of a film this early in the year. And I love that we get it, because we now have a measuring stick for the rest of the year with a movie to compare it to. So we're very fortunate. Last year, the first movie we had to forecast was Ant-Man Wasp Quantumania. So this is a giant leap above that.
Yes, it is. Brian, your thoughts on that?
So I after watching the movie, I watched it on a Thursday preview. I was so inspired that I could not watch anything else on TV, because it just felt everything was not even up to the class of what I just watched. And then I wrote on my laptop, and I pumped out a quick first thoughts for DraftKings Network. You can go read it if you want. But I did list out some of the possible categories for next year's Oscars. I think I was a little bit too high on it right when it happened.
What was your number, Brian?
14. I gave it 14 nominations.
Okay, I had 15. I had 15.
Wow. So
we're on the same boat. Yeah.
I did kind of tone it down after thinking about it a little bit. That best score, Hans Zimmer won best score for the first one, and they tend not to like to reward score for a sequel because you're using a lot of the same themes from the first one. So maybe they won't get nominated for score, but got it for all the other ones. All the big 5, Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Timothée Chalamet. I think Timothée Chalamet was great in the film. I think
Austin Butler was phenomenal as well.
He was so good. And I thought Timothée Chalamet, I was I know he's a star, but then him being able to do Willy Wonka and then open a movie that everybody thought they were going to hate, and then comes in and does the Timmy thing and does Dune Part 2, and the second half of that film where he becomes the leader, where you just want to run through a brick wall, and the guy's 115 pounds soaking wet. I'm behind this guy. This is our Leo.
It was incredible.
It's so funny you just brought up Wonka, because I thought that. I said, this guy just played Wonka, now he's playing this. He's an underrated. He might be one of the best actors.
He's great. He's already been in some really fantastic movies before this, but now he's getting the larger scale, but still a movie like Dune, you get the large scale, but still room to be an actor that the Oscars love. So yeah, I do love it. The best part, I saw it in IMAX last night. And when he is going out to the edge, and it's got all the entire army underneath him, it just that shot behind him was that's the Oscar.
Denis Villeneuve, he's really gonna be tough to beat, I think, for Best Director.
Best Director?
Yes. He's gonna be tough. That was phenomenal. I mean, that was some of the best work I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, I just couldn't get over the scale of the production, and I've also watched a bunch of behind-the-scenes stuff. I'm like, how can you do this? It's just, what's real, what's fake, which is a great question to ask if you're watching a movie this big. I'm like, is that a real Dune, or is that CGI? Is
that a real sandworm?
Yeah, is that a real set? Exactly. It's how did they get off is the greatest question ever asked about this movie.
I think it'll open, probably somewhere in 3 digits at plus value. I mean, you're not going to see anything open at minus value for Best Picture. That's just crazy. So, I think it's worth taking a flyer on as soon as Best Picture odds come out for 2025.
Yeah. And just to sort of use this as a measuring stick, I just rewatched Titanic because, why not? That came out in February. So that movie came out in February of that, whatever year it was, I think 97, and it won the 98 Oscars. So it is possible for a movie to come out this early and just be dominant. And that movie, I believe, ties the record for a number of awards, which is 11. So it's very possible that this movie is just another juggernaut. And I just have to say, Christopher Nolan, lucky that Dune Part 2 did not come out last year.
Oh, okay. I like that little shots fired at Christopher Nolan there. Dennis is right behind you, big guy. Some other movies that we can anticipate. So I think one of the big Oscar shifts for next year, just looking at potential prospects, Bong Joon-ho's movie, Mickey 17, I think it got delayed into next year. So that might be close of whether or not it is qualified for next year's Oscars or comes out in time for that one. Are there any other movies you're anticipating? Gladiator 2 is a big one. We do have an Amy Winehouse biopic coming out, so we know the music biopics are big. Any anticipated movies that you're looking ahead for?
I mean, we got way too many sequels. It's a record number of sequels, I believe, that come out this year.
It's a lot.
So, I mean, I think the Bike Riders got pushed back, if I'm not mistaken. Butler and Tom Hardy, that might be one you want to watch.
It's going to be this year.
Okay,
so it was pushed back from last year to this year, and I am jacked for that one. But go ahead.
And Shirley, that's Regina King, right?
I'm not sure.
I think Shirley is another one with Netflix coming out. So, there's a few, but look, Kung Fu Panda 4 animated market, that's probably the next one up on my list, but we'll see.
No, but I'm most jacked up about Bike Riders. Like, I was excited for it last year to come out, but Bike Riders looks so good. It has all the pedigree to where I think it's not going to contend and say like the best, maybe not best director, maybe not best, like below the line stuff, but they have so many good acting performances in it, like Austin Butler and Tom Hardy. I think it's going to be one of those cases where Timothée Chalamet has to go up against Austin Butler in Best Actor, which would be very interesting.
What's working for Bike Riders is Austin Butler's rise just keeps happening. Obviously, after Elvis, that was big for him. I didn't really like Elvis all that much, but he was phenomenal in it. And then he goes something like Dune after and does this completely other part. I think everybody is just infatuated by Austin Butler. It's kind of like we're getting movie stars again, like big movie stars are happening. It really feels like it, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah. I wrote about that in the article. I was like, it's the return of the movie stars. Like, we didn't have, I think we missed out in the 2010s with all the superhero movies where you have, all the superheroes. But now you get guys who can actually act, and you get this catalyst of a film that's Dune Part 2 with all the actors all in kind of the same age range that this is the future. This is the future of movie stars. This is your new Leos. This is your new Brad Pitts. This is your new Julia Roberts. These are the ones that are going to take us to the next level, and very excited about it.
I want to mention too, Paul Mescal, he's getting momentum too. He's going to be in Gladiators too. That's another one I would probably watch.
I liked him in, what was that? That movie where he neglects his daughter on vacation, where he got nominated.
Oh my God. Right. That's one of my favorite movies.
That was a great movie. And I will say that I think, like, if you were giving a Calder trophy, like a Rookie of the Year, to anyone, I think it would be Chalamet. I mean, he's on the rise. I would like to see maybe implement an award like who had the best year. So like, like Coleman Domingo, Color Purple and Rustin, like, he deserves some sort of praise for killing it in 2 different movies and 2 different performances. So that would be nice if maybe they expanded.
And one last movie I do want to ask about too. Joker Part 2 is coming out. I feel like when it first came out, it was big. After that, it kind of got mixed. Everybody kind of had mixed feelings on it. It's not one that seems like it's aged that well, I guess, or at least as time gone on, everybody loved it as much as they did when it opened. What are your guys' thoughts as we're getting into, because it's 2 great actors. I don't know why I said it like that. Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga. So they're big actors and actresses in this movie that was big when it first came out a few years ago, or however long it came out. But it just feels like Joker's kind of in a weird place now with people. I don't know how you guys feel about that, anticipating it for this year.
Yeah, I think, it has so many interesting factors that go into it, that obviously it's a sequel for the Joker. People enjoyed that people love the Joker character, for one, so people are going to show up. People also love Lady Gaga. They saw her in Star is Born, which was great, but then they saw her in, her other Italian movies, which she wasn't that great in. But it's interesting to see how she's going to tackle, I think is it Harley Quinn is the character that she's going to be playing? I forget what the main character is going to be called.
Is it Harley Quinn?
But it's also going to be a musical, which is going to be so weird. So I think that is an interesting aspect of this film.
Yeah,
so,
I don't know if that'll help it or not, because
who
sequels
knows, man?
have to. If a sequel is going to be like on the same level as the first one, it's got to be as good or better. And Dune Part Two obviously was better. I'm not sure this one will be better than the first one. I mean, we'll see. We have to review it and see actually what it brings to the table. But it's tough for sequels to do that, and I think also, the fact that it is a musical, it might throw people the wrong way.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But I'm going to leave my expectations at the door. I think of it like Avatar 2. Like it could, and it might turn some heads, and it might get a nomination or two, but it probably won't deliver the way the first one did. Like it might get a Best Song nomination since it's a musical, but it won't get Best Picture or Actor or Actress, something like that.
The return of movie musicals. Wonka came out early this year, right? That was a bit of a musical. We got
Wonka
Wicked
was a snub, by the way.
You think so?
Well, if La La Land couldn't win
fantastic.
against Moonlight, I think musicals have no future. Because I heard you earlier. I heard you earlier on your radio show that Moonlight turned you on to movies, and I have to say one of the most disappointing moments of my Oscar watching career was watching La La Land lose to Moonlight, and I have refused to watch Moonlight ever since. But maybe it's time for a rewatch.
I also really love La La Land. That's a great.
So, but no, it's all good. But I wanted to touch that.
It's just so funny how there are musicals coming out, because we had Mean Girls, Wicked's going to come out, and Joker, and yet studio executives are like, yeah, we don't really like musicals. So
I love musicals. Give me musicals all day.
I love musicals, but studio execs are like, don't say that word. Don't say musical.
That's so true. They don't
advertise it.
It's like they had Wicked for the Super Bowl. They had the commercial. Zero singing. It's like
barely any of the songs in it.
It's
unless
like we know what's
Steven
coming.
Spielberg, unless you're Spielberg doing West Side Story remake, then
sure.
Yeah, well, you're Steven Spielberg, so that does.
Yeah,
West Side Story. That was an awesome adaptation of that. It was very good. All right, I could talk movies way too long with you guys, so I'm going to end it here. Thank you so much again, Thom. Where can everybody find you and all your stuff?
Discord, TikTok, Twitter. It's the same handle name @_TJKC_.
And Brian.
And then you guys can find me, Brian Ortega LV. That's my Twitter. And then you can find any of my writings on DraftKings Network as well as vsin.com during Oscar season. But for the rest of the year, DraftKings Network for movie reviews.
I love this. This is going to happen again. I don't know if it's going to happen sometime sooner in August or whenever odds come out. I don't know. This is fantastic. I can't wait for the Oscars. It's going to be a great time. That is it for The Line Change. Again, you can follow us at Fox Sports The Gambler. Subscribe on our YouTube channel and find us anywhere you get your podcast. The Line Change with Jon Jansen, which is me. I am Jon Jansen. Follow me at jjansen34. More Line Change coming up next week right here on The Gambler.